I must say that when I give technical talks, I usually don't pack the room. So this is a new experience for me, but I do want to welcome everybody. We know your time is valuable, and I want to thank the city here for offering to host us in this fine facility, and I'm very conscious of their time as well, and this meeting is slated to go until 8 o'clock, so we're going to move it right along because we don't want to speak too long. We want to open it up and hear what our stakeholders have to say. I understand there are a number of elected officials in the room. Hands up. Welcome. Thank you for participating. Somebody's talking through this phone. I can hear you. Is that good? Because it's not helping me. Okay, sorry about that. There may be some other water management district officials. I'll ask the executive directors to introduce the governing board members when they have their turn on the podium. And full disclosure, I did want you to know that Cliff Lewis from out of state, Georgia, is in the room. I won't necessarily disclose where he is, but if he wants to wave, then you'll know. Okay. This is an important, very important meeting for DEP and the water management districts, and I think for all of us. The number of people in the room tells me that there's a lot of interest in our water resource issues, and it's very important to this process that we hear all of our water users, our environmental interests, our governmental interests. It's important that we get all of those issues on the table, share science, share procedures, work collaboratively and inclusively together so that we can solve our water resource challenges and exchange information. And that's what we're trying to make sure we initiate here tonight, is that stakeholder process. Can you guys see that? I think there might be a lighting thing we can do to make it a little easier to, whoa. Wow, okay. Now I wish I could see, but that's okay. So we appreciate that all of you are here, that you're representing your communities, that you're here representing your organizations or just as private citizens. And we are looking forward to working with all of you to resolve our common concerns and to plan for all of our futures. Our futures depend on our water resources, and I think everyone in this room understands that. Perhaps no more so than we do at DEP. We recognize that the future of both our environmental resources and our economy are linked to clean, affordable, and adequate supplies of water. The health of our water bodies depends on it, and that's why at DEP, water and getting the water right is one of our top 3 priorities. So you hear Secretary Vineyard virtually anytime he is speaking, you'll hear those words from him, and I echo that sentiment here tonight. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we have to maintain our natural systems and ensure a sustainable water supply for future generations, not just for us, but for future generations, and to balance those needs. It's not easy to balance those needs in a drought, and I think we're all feeling the tension of that currently. Well, what steps are we taking? In September of 2011, DEP and both of the water management districts here tonight entered into an agreement to work together collaboratively, share science, share methods. We're not going to do things twice. We're not going to do things 3 times. We're not going to do things by different methodologies and somehow get different answers and then fight over the results. This is going to be one process. That started last year, and it's continuing on now, and it's important, and you're going to hear more about that tonight. And it's time, maybe past time, to bring all of you in on this process and understand all of the fine things that are already underway. The water management districts and DEP are hosting this meeting specifically so that we can hear your voices. All of our stakeholders, the water users, and those that may be interested in representing the environmental concerns and your local entities and governments. So we want to open those lines of communication, that's what this is all about, and ensure a transparent process that includes all of you and any others who couldn't make it here tonight. Meeting agenda, I gotta have an agenda. So we're gonna start off and talk a little bit about what we see as some of the issues, and I think maybe they're apparent to you as well. What are those concerns? What is the science telling us? And we want to recognize the findings so that we can ultimately, as a group, collaboratively find those solutions. We're at the beginning, right? We're not at the end. We're not going to solve our problems tonight, but if we're all hearing one another, I think we'll get there in the end. We will share with you our vision for a North Florida Regional Water Supply Partnership. We've stood up a new website. There's lots to talk about there, and it's important that you understand the activities that the water management districts are already doing. You might be surprised at how much is already underway in a collaborative process, and we'll tell you a little bit about that this evening as well. Tonight, we also are kicking off the stakeholder process. We've got plans to set up an advisory committee, and we're going to be talking to you about that tonight. And really, I think it's an exciting process. And then at the end, we'll invite public issue identification and concerns. We want to hear what your ideas are. Don't worry if we run out of time tonight. This is just the beginning. We'll have many more meetings which will be open to the public and many more opportunities to share concerns and also to share ideas and solutions. I'm really humbled and honored to be here tonight sharing the podium with Charlie Howder and with Hans Tansler, the leadership of our water management districts. And without further ado, I'd like to get Charlie up here so we can get on with the agenda.
Thank you, Ann. And the first thing I'd like to do is introduce a couple of my governing board members who are here. Mr. Carl Meese from Suwannee County. I think I saw him come in. Oh, thank you, Carl. And our newest governing board member, just named last week, Miss Virginia Johns from right here in Alachua. Thank you, Virginia. And she's so new. None of this is her fault. So. As many of you know, we have been making the rounds of the counties in our district to try to bring you up to speed on the status of our water supply planning issue and process. And so a little bit of this may be redundant to you, and I apologize for that. But I think it's important that with this very large and very diverse group that we get everybody kind of on a common framework. So please bear with me as I go through this. First of all, I don't think I need to spend a whole lot of time on this first slide. You guys are already engaged. You're here because you understand the importance of these water issues. And so I don't need to tell you how important water is to our environment, to our economy, to our health and well-being. You guys have got that. Now, what I do want to tell you is that water here in the state of Florida in particular is a shared resource. It's something that belongs to all of us, and we all have a stake in its ownership and in its management. And the responsibility for really providing stewardship for that resource lies with the water management districts and with DEP, but then with the involvement of the local elected officials throughout the region, and also every stakeholder that we see represented here in this room. Now, with a shared resource, you're undoubtedly going to have shared concerns. Among the specific concerns that we're dealing with today are, to what degree is the groundwater pumping in one region having an effect in another region, across district lines or across state lines? How is groundwater withdrawal having an impact on our rivers, lakes, springs, all of our water resources? And then, especially today, with the lack of rainfall that we've had in the last couple of years, how do we determine how much of what we're seeing out in the field today is a matter of the effects of the drought or the effects of excessive groundwater pumping? We know that both play a part, but we don't know to what degree. An important concern that we've got to get on top of. Here's what I'm really talking about. In North Florida, the Floridan aquifer is our primary source of water supply for just about every use going. The Floridan aquifer is a vast, vast resource, and it's got very high quality water. But really, when we're managing our groundwater resources, we're managing a fairly thin layer of that Floridan aquifer. And in many areas, particularly of our district, that resource is very vulnerable. So we have got to manage this Floridan aquifer in its totality. As you see, it underlies the entire state of Florida, and it also extends up to South Carolina to the north and over to Mississippi. But the thing is, of course, this water resource does not respect the lines that you see on the map. The water flows where it wants to go, and we've got to adapt to it rather than it adapt to us. While we're talking about boundaries, I might as well go ahead and address the Georgia-Florida connection, and I'm glad we've got folks from Georgia here with us today. The good news is that we have been coordinating with the state of Georgia, their Environmental Protection Division, and their regional water councils for several years now, since about 2008. And those talks have covered a range of issues that you see there on the screen. Now, unlike some interstate issues, all of our discussions have been very positive, very productive, and they're ongoing. So I think our message about our relationship with Georgia at this point is very positive, very, very constructive. Now, we were talking about shared concerns, and particularly when you're dealing with a natural resource agency like the Water Management Districts or DEP, that leads you to shared science. And that's a lot of what we're about. Now, in the past, we've kind of had the luxury of being able to stay within the boundaries of each water management district as we looked at our resources, we evaluated and made decisions. Not that we haven't talked over the years, we certainly have. But what we found here recently is a ever-increasing need to collaborate, to basically reach across the boundaries of the water management districts and work with the scientists on both sides to try to come up with an understanding of the resource and some solutions for the concerns that we face. Out of this, we are going to come up with an agreement on the methodologies and the analysis of what's happening with our resource. And then, of course, in economy like ours, none of us have the luxury of wasting public resources. And so we are working together and using the public funds that are available to us as efficiently as we possibly can. So we started out with a shared resource. It brought up some shared concerns. We are starting to apply science in a collaborative sharing mode. And hopefully out of all of this, we're going to come up with shared solutions. Now the framework for our shared solution is what, as Ann mentioned, we're calling the North Florida Regional Water Supply Partnership. And the primary members of that partnership, the founding members of the partnership, are the 2 water management districts and DEP. The goal of the partnership is really very simple. We want to provide our citizens with the water they need now and in the future without sacrificing our environment. It's the very definition of sustainability. What we're facing up here in North Florida and looking for shared solutions is not unique in the state. We're starting to see water supply issues that cross district boundaries elsewhere, most notably right now in the Central Florida region. And the 3 districts down there are working in the Orlando area to come up with shared solutions as well. We're hoping to learn from their process, from what they've had to face, and make this an even more effective process as we go forward. What I'd like to wrap up with in the next couple of slides is really kind of a status of things that are already underway as we've gotten this partnership off the ground. As Ann stated, it started with a memorandum of agreement that was signed by the 2 water management district executive directors and the Secretary of DEP last September. The goal of that agreement, really, when you boil it down, is to develop a joint water supply plan. Not a Suwannee River Water Management District plan, not a St. Johns River Water Management District plan, a plan that is going to work for all the citizens of North Florida. Now to get there, we've got to do several things, and we've already started. Going back to the science, a lot of our work relies on the development of mathematical models that help us understand our groundwater resources and evaluate potential impacts to it. There's been a lot of work that's gone on in the past, but now we're working together to build a model that will really work across the entire North Florida region. We've got technical team forms, and we're going to have a consistent approach as we go forward. We're also coordinating on minimum flows and levels. Unfortunately, in both the Suwannee River and St. Johns River Water Management Districts, we have water bodies that either are not now meeting or are expected in the future not to meet the minimum flows and levels. That's the level below which you may see significant harm to our water bodies. This is not a situation that is acceptable or sustainable in any way. And so going forward, we are going to work together to come up with approaches for recovery strategies for those water bodies that are already below their minimum flow or level, and prevention strategies for those others where we can see a problem in the future. A few other things that we already have going. I'm proud to say that St. Johns River Water Management District is already making a financial investment within the bounds of the Suwannee River Water Management District to help address some of these problems. Their board has committed $400,000 to put in 10 clusters of monitoring wells in Baker, Columbia, and Union County within our district. That's going to help this modeling effort that I'm talking about. It's going to feed data that's going to help us with the science to come up with solutions to our water supply issues. Now, as we go forward in the development of the model, evaluating what we think the real situation is out there, we are jointly contracting with the Natural Research Council to provide peer review for the work that the water management districts do. This is like pulling in the Supreme Court of Science to make sure that we are doing it right. This is an unbiased group that will help us in that regard. Another area where we've worked across district boundaries is in our online permitting. St. John's, because of the resources they've got, the population they've got, they're far ahead of us in terms of providing online permitting as a service to our constituents, or their constituents. They have agreed to help Suwannee River get that set up, and are even going to host the web applications that make it all possible. And then finally, we're out there on the stump. Hans and Anns have followed me to a number of county commission meetings, and maybe it's vice versa, to try to drum up this stakeholder involvement. We're trying to get the word out. It's already underway. And we're really glad to see you all here to help us in that process. With that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and counterpart, Hans Tansler.
Thank you, Charlie, and hello, folks. I'm Hans Tansler, Executive Director of the St. John's District, and see familiar faces from other talks in the past, and welcome you here tonight. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I really appreciate the demonstration of concern and enthusiasm. And even though I reside in Jacksonville, I have a second home farm in the Suwannee District and grew up in North Florida all my life. And so my roots are here, and I feel it, and I want you to know that. How many here, by the way, reside in Suwannee District? Anybody? Okay, there we go. How about St. John's? Okay. All right, well, good. Where everybody, it's a big tent, and we've got a tent door wide open, and everybody's welcome and to be part of the process. And it's somewhat unprecedented in that the two districts have, in effect, erased the boundary with respect to this water supply plan. Suwannee's got 15 counties, and St. John's has 18 counties, 33 counties. That's, half the state of Florida. And within that are certain basins that have water supply issues, and certainly North Florida is one. And this is a demonstration of the collaborative effort that's going to try to get one water supply plan for this area. And that's a big deal. I mean, that hadn't happened before. And it's needed, and it's going to be happening now. And that's what this process is about. And so sharing solutions. We're going to be in the solution business. I mean, we're not going to be in the talk business. And we all see streams and not flowing. We see lakes getting dry. We feel it, and we all know it. You don't need science to see the effect of the drought and the effect on our quality of life. And what we also want to plan for is the solutions for dealing with this going forward. Florida right now isn't really growing that fast. Maybe last year, year before, it's 0. This year 1% next year. It may or may not grow as rapidly as it did, but we got to plan for that possibility, and we've got to project what demands might be, and we've got to see what our water supplies are and associate the demand with those supplies. And in doing that, we at St. John's and also at Suwannee are coming up with ideas on solutions, and those solutions are ones that I think will be relevant for our future. And in the spectrum of solutions, I mean, you hear talk of desalination. Yeah, that's on one end, and that happens to be the most expensive one as an alternative water supply. Groundwater, yeah, it's free when it's under the ground, but you got to get it up and transmit it, and that's the least expensive. But then in between, you got reuse, you got recycled water, you've got the surface water use with respect to either stormwater runoff or conceivably even from the river. You'll hear information. Al Canepa, who's Assistant Director of our Water Resource Department, will help provide in about a minute some of the details on some of the details on some of these, and Al will be working with me to help you guys understand these alternatives. But the cost range, I mean, desalination may be $8 a 1,000 gallons. You know, some say, so what? You know, but cost is cost, and no one wants to incur cost unnecessarily. All businesses would be affected, all people and their quality of lives. A cost would have to be passed on to the consumer in utility rates or rate making. So you don't want to incur costs unnecessarily. So you want to be scientifically based in coming up with these solutions. And so some of this is about that process of being scientifically focused and trying to divorce the emotion from it and say what's really going on. And so that's what the beginning of this process is, and I'll come back after Al speaks to talk more about the inclusive aspect of our advisory group with the stakeholders. But for the moment, if aquifer replenishment, I mean, that's another longer term. You'll hear more about that as far as recharging the aquifer with other potential water sources such as reuse and potentially surface water. And all of these have, you know, merit, and all of them are going to be considered in earnest. So Al, come up and join me, buddy. I mean, these people are interested, I think. I'm pretty sure of it. Al Kanipa.
Thank you, Hans. I look forward to working with this group and my counterpart at Suwannee as we move forward trying to solve some of these issues. Let me say a few words about water conservation and how we deal with water conservation and what other opportunities there are. The first line of defense on water conservation is through the issuance of permits, and both districts and their permits require the permittee to institute all feasible water conservation measures and to develop a water conservation plan. That's to ensure an efficient use of the water that is allocated. Another thing that we need to consider is landscape irrigation. If you consider most of us in a residential setting, most of our water, maybe more than half, is used outdoors for landscape irrigation. So both districts have landscape irrigation requirements in place so that we don't overuse irrigation water. Another effort we have available, which is statewide, is the Florida Water Star program. And this is a voluntary certification program where builders can get the certification if they want, and their houses will be fitted with all of the latest internal and external water-saving devices to make it a highly water-efficient home. That reduces our future demands. It's not all about public supply, though. Suwannee River Water Management District, for example, has a very large agricultural water use. And one of the ways that we deal with agricultural water use conservation is through what we call best management practices. And those are guidelines that are developed by industry experts, and they tell the agriculturalist what's the best way to apply water, what's the timing, can you meter your water so that you know how much you're really using, do you have highly efficient spray heads. And so that's a serious agricultural water conservation mechanism that we use. And another thing I'd like to talk about and mention at least is the Suwannee River Partnership. And that was started back in 1999, I think. And it was primarily to deal with nitrate loading to surface water and groundwater bodies. But the good thing about the best management practices that are instituted under this program is that in addition to reducing nitrate, they also reduce water use. So there's an efficiency there. Just to give you an idea on the agricultural side, what conservation is available, in the Suwannee River District, the agricultural water use is roughly 127 million gallons a year. About 111 million gallons a day, 111 million gallons a day is from overhead irrigation. So if we could just improve efficiency on overhead irrigation in the Suwannee District by 10%, That's a savings of over 11 million gallons a day in water use. As part of our water supply planning efforts, we've spent a good deal of time and effort looking at alternative water supplies. We understand that we can't meet all of our future needs through groundwater moving forward. Sometime in the future, we're going to reach a sustainable limit of groundwater. At that point, growth will have to be served by other alternative supplies. The first thing we do is water conservation. But after that, there are a number of alternatives that we can look at, and they're arranged on this slide in kind of increasing cost to produce. Reclaimed water is probably the cheapest of this group, and what reclaimed water is treated wastewater, and it's used primarily for landscape irrigation, some industrial uses, and by doing that, we offset the need to pump fresh groundwater for those irrigation systems or industrial uses. Brackish groundwater is another alternative supply, and what brackish groundwater is simply stated, it's just naturally occurring salty groundwater. Too salty to drink right out of the ground, but there are ways to treat it and remove that salt, and so that is an option. It does have some of the limitations of regular groundwater withdrawals, because if you're pumping salty groundwater, you're still getting some lowering of the water surface. So we have to be aware of that. St. Johns County, for example, it's a coastal county, and they have a facility that treats brackish groundwater and mixes it with their other groundwater, and they serve that to their customers. And it's entirely within the requirements in terms of chemical constituents. Surface water, another alternative supply. Surface water can be a variety of things, as Hans mentioned. You have river withdrawals that are surface water, and you also can capture and use stormwater for various applications. And there's a wide variety of ways you can use surface water. You can have a system that needs to use it 24/7, or you could just skim the peaks during high flows. And it's all how the system is designed. And finally, seawater is an option. It's the most expensive option, and that simply involves removing salt from the ocean water and producing a potable product. Let me mention just a few words about the St. Johns River Water Supply Impact Study. It's a study that we in the St. Johns District just completed. It is by far the most comprehensive, rigorous investigation of the St. Johns that's ever been conducted. It's really a fascinating study. It deals with a whole variety of things: phytoplankton, submerged aquatic vegetation, fish. We did some fairly advanced modeling of the flow in the river. Many of you probably don't know that the St. Johns River on a daily basis flows in both directions as far north as Lake George. There are tidal effects that drive it back and forth. So the finding of this particular study, it proved up that some of our earlier estimation of the use of this as a water supply was correct, and that is you can use the St. Johns River as a water supply source, an alternative water supply source, without causing a environmental issue. There would be no more than negligible or minor impacts, and the degree of impact varies depending on how the plant is designed, how you propose to withdraw, where you propose to withdraw. So there's a whole variety of issues. But one of the best things about this study is it developed some methodologies, some real cutting-edge methodologies, and developed a lot of new data that can be used here in the St. Johns, but elsewhere, perhaps on other rivers, to determine what their ability is to serve as a water supply source. And finally, I'd like to mention aquifer replenishment. we all know what aquifer recharge is, and there's naturally occurring recharge in much of the area that you see in the circle here. What this initiative is to look at how we can bring other water, alternative water that's not normally available for recharge, into the system and cause it to recharge. This water could be things like collected stormwater. It could be peak river withdrawals. You can skim the peaks off of a river, and if you have adequate storage, and this is important for really most alternative water supplies, you need a place to store the water when you have it so that you can use it when you need it. And so storage is an important consideration. And storage, I'm talking about things like either reservoirs, or you can do underground storage in, it's called aquifer storage and recovery. I won't get into the details of that here. We are going to be instituting a pilot test in the Keystone Heights area to see how water that's applied to a system recharges or percolates back into the aquifer. We at St. John's are going to our board next week. And we are going to ask for roughly $500,000 to conduct the study. And I'm anticipating that Suwannee will also be discussing this item with their board as well. And that's all I have. And I believe Hans?
Yeah, thank you, Al. That was an overview of some of the possible solutions that we'll be considering. And that $500,000 study, yes, next Tuesday, the St. John's Board will be considering the funding of that. And and just an FYI, it will have some beneficial effects to the Keystone Lakes with respect to enhancing the benefit of rainfall. But as part of the data collection with respect to aquifer restoration, renourishment, and augmentation. One of the things we want to do tonight is to kick off the idea, which is somewhat unprecedented, of having a community stakeholder group be part of our joint collaborative process. And this is a joint process, as we talked about, between St. John's and Suwannee. And the stakeholder group is really an advisory committee, in effect. And we want it to have as much balance as possible. And to that end, we'll have ideas about representatives of different stakeholders at different industries that may be interested in giving this balanced input. And these stakeholders will come from both the St. John's and Suwannee districts. And the stakeholder would be an opportunity to influence and persuade, to be formally amalgamated with the group that will work collaboratively with the districts to influence and persuade. And that is, I think, part of the outreach and part of the inclusion of the right stakeholders in the tent. And in the formation of it, we're going to propose that each district appoint a representative from these areas: public water supply, power generation, industrial, mining, agriculture, the environmental groups, and local government. And this is the effort here is to get a cross section of our constituency, to have a balanced input, and that's our effort to try to come up with the identification of those constituencies. In the room and facilitating will be DEP, Department of Agriculture, St. John's, and Suwannee Water Management Districts. But the idea is for this group of stakeholders to be able to communicate, deliberate, and to make recommendations to the districts with respect to issues that they wish to bring up, and issues which the districts will bring up to them. And so it will be a form of communication that we think that will enhance the working together of the two districts. And the participation in this, there's to the extent one wishes to volunteer. I mean, and there will probably be groups that may have a representative that wish to volunteer. But it's certainly an indication to anybody in this room and outside of this room to, hate to say it, fill out an application. And it's only to know who you are and to give us 30 days to get back to you. And then at that point, we're going to try to have the group identified in April, call it May. And this form exists where? In the back of the room, up here? In the back of the room. And if you don't have one, and if you're interested, please do get one. But it's simply asking for your identification about yourself, your role with respect to an organization if you represent one, and contact information. And the members of the group, as mentioned, will be appointed by the 2 districts with the supervisory role of DEP. And so it's a collaborative thing. And to that end, it's part of trying to open the tent for this inclusive process. I mean, that doesn't sound like a big wow, but in years past, there wasn't this collaboration. The 2 districts were distinct. Now we're together, and we're trying to outreach and to bring others into the tent. And when you come to the tent, come with solutions. Now, we're not looking for grenades or fire bombers. You know, it's somebody to say, hey, I want to help solve these problems. You know, I want to be part of the process. And with that approach, we want you to be part of the process. And so we encourage you to do that. And there'll be a little more tonight following the Q&A as far as you know, different questions you have, and I'm sure there's a number of speakers. But the starting point is the application form, and it has on the form where to fax or to email it, or perhaps hand it to us tonight. All right, Ann, I think it's back to you.
Thank you, Hans. Okay, I did thank the city when we first started, but I understand one of the city commissioners, Gary Hardacre, are you here? Waving somewhere? Yes. Thank you for offering and hosting this facility for us. I think this is a fabulous room. You could use maybe a few more chairs.
Actually, this is the first time that this has been filled up, as far as I know. We really appreciate you all coming up to our city. Enjoy our new city hall. We all love it very much. And when you get done, you don't have to go home. If it's not too late, Main Street is just about a block away.
I'm headed that way.
It'll be a nice little walk, and you can get some ice cream or some food, or just enjoy with you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate that. Few more comments. One thing I wanted to make clear about this stakeholder committee, it is a sunshine body. So that those meetings, when we have those, they'll be publicly noticed, and there'll be information that's available. But those meetings are not closed to the committee. They will be open to the public, as this meeting is. I mean, if you think about it, if any of you were involved in the Lower St. John's TMDL BMAP process, they had a very similar, I'm not sure what they called it, a steering committee or something, but it was stakeholders that helped to advise DEP and the Water Management District in that process. But those meetings are open, and at each one of those meetings there's an opportunity, again, like there will be in a few minutes, for public comment. So, you know, if you're not in that particular committee, there'll be lots of other opportunities for you. We have set up a website, as you can see, and maybe some of you have already discovered it. It's northfloridawater.com. Just that simple. I think the form that Hans was talking about may already be posted there. Some of our early documentation is already posted there, and if you got one of the handouts, flyers tonight, that information is posted there. And check back frequently, because as things happen and as meeting notices come about, we certainly will be Okay, so I think it's time for some public comment. And do I have all the speaker cards? This is actually a shorter stack than I expected. There must be a game or something on tonight that I'm not aware of. Is it March Madness yet? Okay, so we're going to open it for comments and suggestions. There are a number of you, so we're going to ask you to limit your comments to about 3 minutes each. And I will shamelessly admit that I picked the first speaker by hand. You may have noticed that there's a fourth non-voting participant on our committee. That's the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So I asked Daryl Smith if he would be willing to provide comments first and foremost for us, and he agreed. So he's in the room. He's making his way to the front. Thank you.
And first of all, thank you, Ann and Charlie and Hans. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And if you allow me just briefly to, from a personal note, as many of you are, I'm sure, I've lived in this area all of my life. In Newberry, High Springs, and Bell. I've spent time on the Suwannee and Santa Fe rivers. I've enjoyed the springs. And so certainly I have concern, as many of you all have concerns. And so I'm looking forward to this process and us having things accomplished and solutions, as Hans has mentioned, to help ensure that we have these water resources for our kids and grandkids and future generations. So just from that standpoint, I wanted to mention that. From the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services standpoint, Commissioner Putnam, when he was campaigning before he was elected Commissioner of Ag, he developed a water position paper. Maybe some of you have seen that. And essentially, he identified water as the main issue, not only affecting agriculture, but each of us into the future. And he's reemphasized that, and he continues to emphasize that through our Office of Ag Water Policy. And in addition to that, the other things he had identified in there was, one, we must develop additional water, alternative water supplies, as just been spoken about, rather than coming to debate over our groundwater. And so I certainly that fits here. The other thing he identified was agriculture is a major stakeholder, not only from a water use standpoint, but as a major landowner. Statewide, when you take the 9 million acres that are publicly owned, you're left with 2/3 of the land that are in forest and agriculture ownership. And so certainly, in addition to the water use, agricultural lands have to be part of the solution. Water storage, water recharge. There's already things happening down in the northern Everglades where the South Florida Water Management District is working with ranchers to help store water, which basically helps the system all the way through the Everglades. And so maybe some of that kind of thing can happen here. The other thing Commissioner has talked about has been we must base these things on sound science, new technology. Some of that's been mentioned already, and I think that'll be part of the solution. Finally, one of the things that he mentioned is each of us have impact on this water resource, and each of us have responsibility to our future generations to make sure that that water is there for them. And you saw the Suwannee River Partnership mentioned earlier. That's before I took this current position. That's what I did, along with many of you in the room. There's farmers here. There's people from the University of Florida IFAS and Water Management District, DEP, and Farm Bureau, and just lots of people working to help producers and farmers be as efficient as they can be. And over that last 10, 12-year period, they've saved millions of gallons of water. And that'll continue. So that partnership has been successful. because a group of people came together and addressed serious issues, water quality, and I think the same thing's going to have to happen here. And so, in summary, the Department of Agriculture supports this process as long as it includes the stakeholders that are interested, that it includes sound science to help evaluate and determine solutions. And I think we have already heard that. I guess the one thing that all of us are interested in is that there be a sense of urgency about this. But while we say that, certainly these things have not happened overnight, and it's going to take time. There's going to be solutions that we come up with that are going to take time. It may be that if we determine that an urban area is causing an impact, then people in the rural area are going to have to support alternative water supplies, or vice versa. One of the things that was mentioned is ag water conservation. Well, what we've determined, Hans, is water conservation certainly is one of the cheaper ways to find additional water. And through our programs, you know, the desal was $6 to $8 a thousand. With ag water conservation programs, we're seeing that costing 50 cents a thousand. So if we can find additional funds to help producers do these conservation things, we're saving water at a cheaper rate. So the Department of Ag wants to be part of this process, and we look forward, and I'm pretty sure the agriculture community wants to do the same. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Daryl. We're really excited to have Dax participating with us. Just a quick echo of one of the things that he said. Actually, I think I support everything that he just said, but he mentioned dispersed water storage on ranch lands and agricultural lands, which is already being done in South Florida. We have pending legislation to take that concept statewide, and just thought I'd let you know that most of our water bills right now are kind of stuck in the Senate. So if you'd like to call your state senators tomorrow and say, we'd like to see some of that water legislation get through, it'd be a good time, because they can still vote tomorrow and they can still vote on Friday. So thanks again, Daryl. Next speaker is from Lafayette County, one of our commissioners there, Jack Bird.
Yes, ma'am, I'm right here.
Would you like a mic?
No, ma'am, I think most people can hear me because I got a pretty good voice. Yeah. My name is Jack Bird. I've been lived in Lafayette County all my life. I was born and raised there on the same place still where I live. And this water situation has got to be serious. I know we've had some dry weather and stuff and all, but we've not, you know, we've seen dry weather a bunch of times before. But our big problem, I think, is this water it's coming out of the ground, and never near drop of it's going back to the aquifer. That's the water we got to stop. If it's a bottling plant, or like this water that's going to Jacksonville, the JE over there, this is some of the problems that we got here. It's serious enough that we ain't getting none of this. This irrigation and our agriculture, yes sir, we got to have that, because we can't wait until we run out and then have to depend on these other countries to feed our country. We got to see about our own self. You know, I got youngins and grand-youngins and stuff, and I want them to have water and be where they can enjoy what I have enjoyed in my life. We'll have free water, you know, to get in everything. But one good thing that I see the water management groups has went to doing is they went to including the public and the commissioners and people that's other things that we need to have some say-so in where our water's going, beforehand, we've not had no say-so in where our water's been going. But we're gonna have to get control more of these water management groups like it's working to right now, to where all of the public pretty well can have some say-so over where our water is being sent and used and drawed out of the ground. And then, like these bottling plants, I would like to know if they are paying water management for that water they're drawing out and selling out there. You know, that's water, it never returns back in the aquifer. But whenever you agriculture, where you drip irrigation, we've all started doing that. And then these circulars with these misters on it, that's conserving a big portion. The agricultural department has made a big change in what they have watering and the water that they using. But that's where I'm going back to where I said a while ago, we got to make sure that we keep the agriculture going, because we can't stand to wait for these other countries to feed us, because we feed most of them now. And then if we go to waiting like on Mexico and different places like that, we don't ever know what you eating or where what's on it or what's else. And you know, and that's what's concerning us so in our areas, because all the old lakes and stuff that we've had ever since we were small children has dried up. And this 650 million gallons per day of water leaving out from over there is what's affecting all of these counties in this area. And we appreciate everything that water management here can do. JEA&M needs to make some alternatives on what water they getting and go to using water some other way instead of, you know, depending on just the agriculture part to go in alternatives. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next speaker is Lucinda Merritt.
We have some stakeholders who can't be here tonight, and I would just like to remember them. They're either dead or dying. Buzzard Spring, Convict Spring, Fanning Spring, Finn Holloway Spring, Hampton Spring, Hornsby Spring, Kissingen Spring, Marion Blue Spring and 20 others, Royal Spring, Suwannee Spring, White Spring, Worthington Spring, Blue Spring, Blue Hole Spring, Health Spring, Gemini Spring, Green Spring, Hunter Spring, Pitt Spring, Rainbow River, Rock Spring, Royal Spring, and Sulphur Spring. These are all springs that have either dried up or are so polluted that frequently they can't be used by the public. It's clear to me that our water management districts have failed our springs, the DEP has failed our springs, and I'm hopeful with this new group that things will start to be different. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. The next speaker is Tony Cunningham from Gainesville Regional Utilities.
Good evening. My name is Tony Cunningham, and I represent both Gainesville Regional Utilities and the citizens of Gainesville and Alachua County that we serve with water from a public supply. First, I'd like to say, one of the things we heard is the importance of using water efficiently and effectively. And for instance, at GRU, our customers and the citizens of Alachua County and Gainesville, they use about 69 gallons per day per capita. It's a good example of conserving water, and that's something that's dropped over the last several years. It's a good example of using water a conservative way, which is part of the long-term plan for water supply is going to be the importance of us using less water. But in addition, one of the things we do in our community in Alachua County is we recharge the Floridan aquifer. And so let me give you an example. So of the water we withdraw from the ground, our community returns about 74% of that right back to the Floridan aquifer. And so it's just another example of, as we move forward, solutions that we need to sustain our water supply are going to be important, and we work together and we use that in an efficient manner. Lastly, I'd just like to say that I completely support the idea of this process that has been put together. I think it's essential. One gentleman said, we all use water in this room. So that you can't just point fingers at others. We all use water. And so it's going to be important for all of us collaboratively to develop the solutions moving forward. And I think this process is putting together a framework in which all stakeholders can come together and collaboratively work towards those solutions. So thank you.
I feel pretty good. Every time I get up, people are clapping. That seems... Just kidding. Thank you, Tony. The next speaker is Whitney Markle, representing Sierra Club.
It's Whitey Markle. Conservation Chair for the Suwannee St. John Sierra Club. We try to take care of 15 counties in this part of Florida, running from Chesawitska all the way to the Georgia line, from the Gulf all the way over to the St. Johns. So we have a big responsibility. This idea about amalgamating into regional water control leads me to believe that we're going to amalgamate into what they call the Californication of Florida, where we will eventually have a big grid of pipes and nobody will have any more water than anybody else, although some parts of the state have already overused their water. So I have that fear. I do like the idea about standardizing the data and the modeling so that the water management districts, unlike they have in the past, will be able to communicate with each other, scientifically communicate. Until recently, this model didn't match this model, so they couldn't compare their notes. And also another problem that I've seen, I've been involved in water issues now for about 10 years. And what I've seen is the water management districts are in charge of water supply. They're in charge of water quantity. The Department of Environmental Protection is in charge of water quality. And so if you ask somebody from the water management district about quality, they have a perfect reason not to answer you because that's not their job. So I hope this amalgamation we're talking about is going to get that kind of communication going between the agencies also, so that we can talk about the water nutrient problem to Silver Springs that's coming up. By the way, that's a big one. Adena Springs, 30,000 acres, 30,000 heads of cattle, 89 10-inch wells. It's almost permitted. It's right on the verge of being permitted. Agriculture needs to get involved in that one too, because 30,000 acres, 30,000 cattle, each one of them pooping every day. Silver Springs is turning green as we speak. And so you got to start communicating with each other, and you also have to learn to say no on some of these permits. There's no way that permit, which is bigger than the permit that the city of Ocala has, there's no way 30,000 cattle are going to require that much water. It's a grab, it's a water grab, it's a foreigner doing a water grab, and I guarantee you it's going to turn into a great big development. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is David Dickerson from Water Collectives.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Good to see everybody, and I'm really encouraged by participation in some of the forward-thinking ideas and presentations here tonight. Basically, I think this advisory committee is a good thing. It probably won't turn into be an amalgamation of water pipes. There's probably a lot of things we can do. I'm personally in the nursery business, wholesale nursery business. I know Hans personally. And I think there's a lot of positive steps we can use, particularly with surface water, and the surface water being a major source of supplementation. There's a lot of things we can do with water checking, water metering, flowways, impoundments, goes on and on. These things can be recreational, and they can supplement the springs. So anyway, I'm eager and excited about seeing all these things, and I think it's very encouraging, and I thank you for this time to be up here and give the time over. Also, I wanted to know about Etna, or Etonia. What is it, Etonia? Etna, and what progress was going on there with that project. I'll be seated. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. More information to follow. The next speaker is Marilee Malwitz Gibson. Hope I got that right. Our Santa Fe River.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Well, I heard a lot today. I've heard a lot in a lot of meetings. I'm very concerned about the idea of recharging our aquifer with treated wastewater. I don't know if many of you realize what they're talking about, but from what I've done with my research, I realize that this is actually water that's been treated. And I've talked to a lot of water treatment people, and they cannot remove arsenic. They cannot remove pharmaceuticals. That doesn't necessarily mean pharmaceuticals that you're flushing down your toilet. That actually means the pharmaceuticals that you're ingesting. So the idea of recharging our aquifer with tainted water very much concerns me. They do this in the Alachua sink where they put treated wastewater, and it is a test pilot program that they do in the southern part of Gainesville, and it concerns me that any of this water would go into our aquifer because it's going to end up in our springs, it's going to end up in our river. Our rivers are already polluted. The Santa Fe River is already impaired. I think you all should also know what deep well injection is. This is wastewater that isn't necessarily treated, and they send it 3,000 to 5,000 feet deep. They do this in the Keys. They do this along the coastlines. They're now trying to possibly do it in our area, in our neighborhood. Our aquifer, as we know, as Wes Skiles, the wonderful photographer, has shown us, our aquifer is Swiss cheese. So anything we put down into our water system is going to show up in our springs and our rivers. So with that being said, I'm very concerned. There's a lot of things I'd like to say tonight, but I'm going to shorten my time because I know that everybody else would like to speak to, but that's a very important one. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Andy Jackson. Sure. Okay. The next speaker is Tim Williams.
Good evening. My name is Tim Williams. I'm here tonight on behalf of Suwannee Progress, which is an issues-oriented political action committee in Suwannee County. Our founding member of Suwannee Progress is James Cornett, and he's the owner of the Spirit of the Suwannee Music Park. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. They have about 700,000 people per year who attend there, and I guess my question is, why isn't tourism included as one of the seats on your committee? Tourism is dramatically important to all of North Florida, especially as it relates to our natural resources. So I'd encourage you to include tourism. My background's in agriculture, so I've been pleased with the agricultural comments. Ag is primarily misunderstood, but I think the main point is, for me at least, is the difference between agricultural use of water in areas of high aquifer recharge versus confined areas, which I think includes most of Jacksonville. I'm looking forward to this process. I think it's great. It's late, but I'm glad we're here now. So thank you very much, and Suwannee Progress looks forward to continuing to participate. Thank you. One more thing. May I please have a copy of your presentation?
We'll be posting on the website.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, in case you didn't hear that, we'll be posting a copy of this presentation on the website, maybe as soon as tomorrow. The next speaker is Jackie Host from Lake Area Water Alliance.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm so glad we have 2 new leaders of our water management districts that are going to have an opportunity to work together and further the needs of us all. I don't think we ought to be limiting our options on recharge and replenishment. I think there's a lot of science out there, and we need to consider everything. I'm so overwhelmed to see all these people here in Keystone Heights. We've been begging people to conserve their water and listen to us for about 10 years because our lakes have been drying up. So I just think it's wonderful to see you all here, and it's wonderful that the management districts are bringing everyone together to work together, because that's what it's going to take. We need to come together in the true sense of partnership, and by being angry at each other and calling names, that's not going to help anything. And I just encourage you to do that and work together and work with the management districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. The next speaker is Paul Still, Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District.
Hi, I'm Paul Still. I'm the administrator for the Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District, and I also represent them on the steering committee that's developing or guiding the development of the new model for this region. I have complained from the very initiation of that process that it needed much broader representation. That steering committee now has 5 members that are from the Keystone Heights area, but that particular model impacts the entire region, and I think it's real critical that that steering committee be expanded to include the entire region. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I just had a meeting with St. John's River Water Management District this morning dealing with this pilot study. It was with the county manager from Bradford County. The Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District already voted on at their Tuesday meeting to oppose that particular project because it involves pumping groundwater, bringing it up to the surface, and letting it evaporate essentially to figure out what's going on along this chain of lakes. This makes no sense. It's not really a system, a recharge. It's actually a depletion system that they're proposing, and I would urge people to get involved in understanding what they're really saying there. It's also a bit of a kick in the teeth for us in Bradford County because I just learned tonight that this is going before the governing board on Tuesday. Bradford County's county commission is not till that following Thursday. I would urge as a good faith effort that the district pull that item from their agenda and not present it to the governing board. Thank you.
Hello, yeah, Dr. Chertel wants me to give a little follow-up, if I may. 2 levels of comfort on that pilot project. I mean, one is the well that we're proposing will go down to the lower Floridan aquifer, and which has a confining layer between that and the upper Floridan. And the lower Floridan will have the effect when percolating to help charge the upper Floridan aquifer. I mean, this is the hydrologists that know the most, and that's part of the intriguing aspect of this, is to get water that is way down. Now, there's a 10% evaporation rate, you're exactly right, but the benefits of the study will measure the percolation of the surface water to the upper Florida. And it's only it's a 2-year project, basically, maybe 3. But your comments appreciated, and that's just a follow-up.
The long-term plan is certainly to consider using alternative new water sources for that kind of replenishment. So appreciate your clarifying that, Hans. The next speaker is Annette Long with Save Our Suwannee, Inc.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk. I honestly came to this meeting tonight to ask the water management districts and the DEP, what don't you understand about our springs are drying up? And from listening to everything that's been said tonight, it sounds like they do understand that we have a problem. But it will take time, I understand, but we have to act now. And while I'm here talking to everybody, I'd like to campaign to have a seat with the stakeholders. I'm very qualified. I've been to hundreds of water management district meetings, and I would really like to participate. But I have a question. If the plan that I want to bring to the table is a solid regulatory, mandatory conservation plan, can I be a stakeholder on the stakeholder group? Well, I mean, what are the criteria? Mr. Tansler mentioned that if you don't have a plan, you don't just want people to complain. Is there a criteria?
Let me just clarify what I think we're looking for. For this committee, if I may.
Please.
This committee, we love that this room is filled today, but to try to actually have a meeting and start beginning to move the ball down the field, we need a group that's a little bit smaller where we can really get into the meat and potatoes of things. And what we would like to see in the folks that are sitting in those chairs is folks who are willing to coordinate with the other like-minded stakeholders, so that that person, when they are sitting there discussing and voting, are representing more than just the one particular point of view that you have, but the wider point of view. So for example, for environmental groups, there will be there's diversity in those groups, but there's a chair for someone to sit in that environmental chair, if you will, one from Suwannee and one from St. John's. Hopefully, those seats are filled with stakeholders who are willing to coordinate with the rest of the environmental groups behind them, so that when you're bringing forward information and solutions, you're speaking for more than just yourself. That's what we're looking for.
And you're going to, is there, like you said, there's an application?
There's a form. We may have run out of them, but it's also posted on the website.
And I have one other question. How many stakeholders will be chosen?
6 from Suwannee and 6 from, I think there's 6, right? 6 from Suwannee and 6 from St. John's, from each of those stakeholder groupings. Thank you very much, because I think that was a good question. The next speaker. I mean, I think the criteria, it's not like the criteria are exactly what I just said. You're a member of whatever that stakeholder group is, and you have the ability to speak for more than just your particular point of view. Tony, if I might use you and your utility group as an example, there's a utility group, the public water supply folks within, is it all of St. John's? Okay, so there's a utility group and they have meetings and they coordinate. If they wanted to apply for a seat at probably the St. John's seat under public water supply, I mean, I would be hopeful that whoever they decided to put up, they would make it clear in their application that they're going to be meeting with that stakeholder group, and when, you know, if it was Tony, if he's sitting at the table, he would be speaking for more than just Gainesville Regional Utilities. So it's networking with like-minded stakeholders. That's not a perfect system. We understand that. It is similar to the way it was done for the Lower St. John's BMAP. Some of those representations were maybe better than, or more effective, I'll say, than others. But that's the concept. It's not perfect. So let's say your point of view was not being met by that group. Obviously, you could talk to your representative on there, but you also, at any one of these meetings, we will have an opportunity for public comment. So it's absolutely, you know, you fill out the card, and at the end you say, you know what, I appreciated what so-and-so had to say and how that person voted on this particular issue, but that I didn't feel that way. So we'll always have that last opportunity for the individual voices to be heard. Okay, each water management district will evaluate their own applications. So in other words, the 6 representatives that will be coming from Suwannee will be looked at by Suwannee River Water Management District, and DEP will be, you know, ratifying, or, you know, giving the check mark. Okay, that looks good, and we hope that, I mean, you know, if we get everybody in the room that applies, and we're picking 12 at the end of the day, it's not everybody's going to have that seat, but there will be lots of opportunities to plug in. But to be clear, the seats in Suwannee will be picked and put forward by the folks at the Suwannee River Water Management District with DEP's blessing. And same with St. John's. St. John's will be looking to fill their seats. Is that helpful?
How do they determine what was the criteria for selection?
No, not that we like them. Not that, I mean, in other words, if I wanted to have a seat, and I represented public water supply, we'll keep with that example, I would be trying to, and I even think there's a place on the form for this, you know, have you coordinated with other like stakeholders? You know, are you representing more than just Gainesville Regional Utilities? And if Tony was putting in that application and he'd done some coordination, he would be presumably able to say, I'm going to be sitting in that seat not only for GRU, but for that entire Northeast Florida Utility Council. It doesn't. What does? Here, let me see. There's nothing like that here. Please provide any name. All right, this is the place where I meant that. Please provide names and contact information for stakeholders who support your recommendation on the committee. I mean, we're looking for someone that has the ability to represent more than just their own particular point of view. You can attach as many pages to this as you would like. I'm sorry, that's not clear. Is it more clear now? Maybe we can add a little bit more clarification on the website while people, you've got about a month to get these in, so we'll try to get a more clear explanation there. But so that was the Ann Shortell rendition of what would look like a decent application.
Can I comment? What the Suwannee Board has asked our staff to do is to take the applications and staff put together a slate based on their judgment looking at the applications. And we've asked the staff to get with each board member separately in advance of the next board meeting to go through the rationale, and then we
We have a couple more speaker cards.
How often do you expect this committee to meet and for how long a period of time?
Well, those are both very good questions. This process is not, I mean, I heard the comment about the sense of urgency, and I do understand that. We are moving, but the process itself is fairly lengthy. When we're in the middle of important things, it would never, I can't imagine that we'd meet more than monthly. It might be something more like every couple of months. I would anticipate that the meetings would be scheduled based upon when we need to, evaluate something, make a decision, begin to move along. And then, eventually that would lessen. Right now, the Lower St. John's BMAP process, that group is meeting annually. The committee is still active, but once a year. Well, it's not 33 counties. I mean, it is 30. The two districts have 33 counties. The area of interest here is really focused in the north, so it's not every single one. I don't think Osceola County, for example, is going to, they're all into the Central Florida Water Initiative, not this particular initiative. But, there's a balance that has to be struck between numbers of people and, the ability for a committee to do its job. This group will be able to form subcommittees and do some other things if they want to, just like the TMDL BMAP process they did. They did do that. That committee started out, I think, with 13 members, which, sounded like about the right amount to us. They might have a couple more now, but I think we're in the right ballpark. And we are hopeful that if we can find members who are willing to work with their like-minded stakeholders, that it will work. Yes, ma'am. I can't hear you.
I would think that it would be very important to give some preference for government agencies, local government, because that's the only way an individual has access to resources.
Well, but there's a seat in each district for local government. That's on. That's definitely on there. So a group that can represent more than one in that category would be a good choice, I would think.
Commissioners would have representation on that.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, one member is going to of a county or city would be sitting on that committee. So, again, it's not that every county is going to put a commissioner on there.
I understand.
Okay.
It's just that I'm stressing that it's so important as an individual to have someone to resort to, my elected official.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that.
Thank you.
I agree with that. We have 2 more speaker cards, so let me at least get to those folks before we forget what we're doing here and I drop these. The next speaker is Jim Lloyd.
Himself. I'd like to borrow that paper that I back that paper I gave you a little bit earlier for a few minutes, a couple of minutes. I'm Jim Lloyd. I live in Lafayette County in the Hatch-Bend area. I represent a loosely formed group of residents along the river, all of them full-time residents. We use the river for boating, fishing, our children, our grandchildren, and so forth. I'm not sure I saw a stakeholder in that list up there that kind of represents the average guy or gal like me, and that's just a comment. I wanted to share a couple of things, and they're sort of pictorial sharings. You saw, you can't see it, but you saw it up on the screen earlier, the map of the Florida aquifer, a couple points to make. One is about 40% of that area is in states north of Florida. Another point is that the organization we're talking about here today to get organized to help solve our water problems represent about roughly 25% of the whole area. The other pictures, they're all similar. It's a series of graphs. You won't be able to see them. They come out of reports that are publicly available. But every one of these graphs, every one of these black lines represent a well that's measuring the aquifer. These 5 are South Georgia. All of those, the wells head from the high level of the aquifer to the low level as measured in sea foot or to sea level. A quick look, in my mind, at these charts is just a picture that just overwhelmingly identifies the seriousness of the problem that we're dealing with. The next pages, there's 3 of them. There's 5 wells on each page. These are all North Florida wells of various areas. Every one of them is heading in the same direction. They represent a pretty substantial amount of time frame, from 30 years to about 80 years on these different ones. It's not just a 2-year drought situation. The conclusion I have is that we're pulling water out of the bathtub a lot faster than we're putting it in, and we're continuing to find more ways to pull it out. One of Whitey's 10-inch wells that he talked about, our local hatch bend engineer did a rough calculation. If I interpolated his data, that well could pull in a day's time what the flow we saw in Little River Springs earlier this week would run in about 20 days' time. That's a lot of water to pull out of our system. One well. Some points to think about. That's not me, except maybe I'm supposed to go away. To me, as just an individual, this hits home the seriousness of the problem. And I question whether we are even yet pulling the organization together, the group or the geographical representation to solve it. We can't solve it in just these 2 water districts. And I also think that we're going to have to find solutions. We're not going to shut down the agriculture, and most of the usages, each one in themselves, are very justifiable. We're going to have to find ways to get more water, and we don't need to do, in my mind, a huge amount of minimum flow studies and spring levels and all that. We need to go after finding ways to get it and how to do it in some sort of a reasonably economic way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. The last speaker is Bob Barnes. He's the Vice Mayor and City Commissioner for High Springs.
Thank you for allowing me to come up here last minute. 1 or 2 years ago, I was just like most of you out in the audience. I was going to the Suwannee River water management meetings complaining about the expansion of the sewer system in High Springs. Then I went to the Jacksonville office for the DEP and complained about the spray fields at this High Springs sewer system expansion. Neither wanted to seem to talk to each other, so I'm looking forward to this collaboration where we bring those ideas together. I brought them data that said we had a problem, but I wasn't an elected official. I was just like you, concerned about the water and conservation. Now I'm an elected official, and I think I should have a voice, and I want to bring it out, because a year or 2 ago, when I brought that information to them, there was data of a geo study, and Marilee and I have talked about this for years, about a geo study in sinkholes. There's a YouTube video that talks about High Springs. If you Google YouTube High Springs sinkhole, you will see a sinkhole that's 100 feet deep and goes to the aquifer, right where we spray water. And I asked for that geo study from the engineering company, and I asked DEP and I asked Suwannee River to look at it. And we couldn't get that study. The engineering company held it back from me till about a week ago. There's 15 to 20 anomalies that are probably sinkholes on that spray field. We need to address it. DEP needs to address it, and Suwannee River Water Management needs to address it before they continue to issue expansion permits for that spray field. There's alternatives, and I came here tonight because I wondered, why didn't you come to High Springs for this meeting? But now I realize we couldn't have accommodated this crowd, and what a great crowd. So I look forward to being on this group and to see the Water Management District collaborate with the DEP to make sure that things get really looked at when a citizen brings them something, and then understand that they might be telling you the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, one last late-breaking request to speak. Lee Chauncey.
Thank you for letting me speak, although I didn't turn in a slip. My name is Lee Chauncey. I'm from Suwannee County, and I don't represent anybody right now, but I am running for county commissioner up there. And the only reason I'm telling you that is because I'm out talking to people in Suwannee County every day. And the issue that I'm encountering is one of trust. They don't trust you, they don't trust you, they don't trust you, and they've told me they're not going to trust me if I get elected. And I don't blame them, because I'm looking at your definition of stakeholder here, and if it's defined by these 6 categories here, the definition is special interest. You need a category on here for the average homeowner or small business owner. Now, that's pretty much all I got to say about it, but if you want to work on this trust issue, get the common people involved in this. Thank you.
I will try to clarify how we came up with those groups. We have the environmental groups to represent our natural systems, and the other groups are all the water users, the regulated community, the ones that have to come in for consumptive use or water use permits. So that's how we came up with those categories. I would hope that the local government representation chairs would represent their citizens. I would certainly hope so. I think we've finished our public comments at this point, and yes, ma'am?
I would just like to bring something back up that has come up. You talked about the frequency of these meetings and everything. I'm listening to the comments over here. I think that people ought to be willing to meet, if not weekly, which may be not enough time to get work done, but it ought to be bi-weekly, and this thing ought to move on. This is so important, and one of the trust issues here is that we've been bringing, our Santa Fe River's been working on this stuff for years, and we've been asking for stuff for years. The slowness with which this stuff moves can be picked up a little bit. I mean, it could be if people are willing to meet, and we're willing to meet.
I appreciate your comment, and I will tell you this: we did put a month time frame on the application, the filling out of the forms, because we do understand that not everybody's here tonight. We understand that boards may have to meet, folks may have to. I mean, that was not in any way.
I'm talking about when the committee gets there.
Yes, ma'am, I understand, but I just wanted to make sure everybody didn't think that we had, missed the boat on having too long of a gap for that. So.
Can I just ask one question? Heard and I've seen the folks at the table shake their head. I'm in school over Columbia County Observer. Is that nobody really seems to be satisfied with the amount of stakeholders that are on this group that you've chosen? Is that subject to expansion, or is this cast like Lot's wife in stone?
It's where we're going to start because we have to start somewhere. We believe we've got our water users represented and our environmental natural systems represented, but over time, I do know that the BMAP steering committee group, that executive committee, did, realize that they needed to make some tweaks. So, we have to start somewhere. This is where we're starting.
And tourism and general homeowners. That's two more, and that's not a lot.
General homeowners don't get consumptive use permits. They're exempt. They're water users. They're either represented by their local officials or they're represented by their water utilities. We'll take it under advisement. How about that? Second. Okay. I want to thank the city for offering this facility, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and participating tonight. We look forward to further participation, and we'll try to get more chairs in the room. Thank you very much.